It was late at night in a Warsaw office building. Neon lights cast cold shadows across the marble floor. A middle-aged man in a worn janitor uniform carefully mopped each stair, while his young daughter sat in the corner doing homework. A well-dressed young woman walked in and suddenly collapsed from exhaustion. The janitor rushed over, helped her up, and gave her water. The building manager appeared and shouted, "You're fired! We didn't hire you to flirt with clients here." The father hugged his daughter and quietly packed his things. He had no idea the woman was a billionaire CEO. His name was Tomasz. He was 40 years old, a single father who had lost his wife to heart disease 3 years ago. Since then, he had been raising his 9-year-old daughter, Lena, on his own. Money was always tight. He worked the night shift as a janitor in one of Warsaw's tallest office buildings because the hours allowed him to spend afternoons with his daughter. The pay was barely enough, but it was honest work. Around his neck, he wore a rusty old key on a chain. It was the last thing his wife had given him before she died. He never took it off. The woman who collapsed that night was named Isabella. She was 34 years old and the CEO of a major tech corporation, but nobody knew that. When she went out in public, she dressed simply and kept her identity hidden. The pressure of running a billion-dollar company was crushing her. Endless meetings, impossible decisions, constant scrutiny. She hadn't slept properly in weeks. That night, her body finally gave out. In her briefcase, she always carried a silver fountain pen engraved with her company's name. It was a reminder of the weight she carried every day. When Isabella stumbled through the lobby doors, Tomasz was mopping the stairs. Lena sat nearby, her math textbook open on her lap. Isabella took 3 steps, then her knees buckled. She fell hard against the marble column. Tomasz dropped his mop immediately and ran to her. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked, his voice full of concern. He helped her sit down gently, then rushed to get water from his thermos. "Here, drink this, slowly." Isabella's hands shook as she took the water. She looked up at this kind stranger in his faded uniform, and for a moment, she wanted to cry. When was the last time someone had shown her simple human kindness without wanting something in return? "Thank you," she whispered. Lena came over, worry in her young eyes. "Is the lady sick, Papa?" Tomasz smiled at his daughter. "She's just tired, sweetheart. Sometimes people work too hard and forget to rest." But then the building manager appeared. His name was Mr. Kowalski, a bitter man who took pleasure in his small amount of power. He saw Tomasz kneeling beside the well-dressed woman and immediately assumed the worst. "What do you think you're doing?" he barked. "You're supposed to be cleaning, not bothering our tenants." Tomasz stood up quickly. "Sir, she collapsed. I was just helping her." Mr. Kowalski's face turned red. "Helping? I know exactly what you were doing. You're fired. Pack your things and get out. We don't hire janitors to flirt with clients." Isabella tried to speak up. "No, you don't understand. He was just—" But Mr. Kowalski cut her off. "Miss, I apologize for this man's behavior. Please don't let this reflect poorly on our building." Tomasz stood there, his shoulders slumped. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He simply nodded, then turned to his daughter. "Come, Lena, let's go home." The little girl's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She helped her father gather his cleaning supplies and put them in the storage closet one last time. As they walked toward the exit, Isabella watched them go, her heart breaking. The man who had shown her kindness was being punished for it. She wanted to say something, do something, but exhaustion overwhelmed her again. By the time she found her voice, they were gone. That night, as Tomasz and Lena walked home through the cold streets, Lena held her father's hand tightly. She whispered, "Papa, you did the right thing. People can take your job, but they can't take your kind heart." Tomasz smiled through his pain and thought, "My daughter understands what most adults never will. Kindness is never wrong, even when it costs you everything." Isabella couldn't sleep that night. She kept seeing the janitor's face, the way he had helped her without hesitation, and the way he had been fired for it. The injustice burned in her chest. The next morning, she made a decision. She had to find him. She had to make this right. Using her connections, it took only 2 phone calls to discover his name and address. Tomasz Kowalski lived in the old district in a rundown apartment building on the edge of the city. That afternoon, Isabella stood outside the building, suddenly nervous. She was used to boardrooms and negotiations, but this felt different. This felt personal. She climbed the narrow stairs to the third floor and knocked on the door. When Tomasz opened it, his eyes went wide with surprise. "You," he said softly. "The lady from last night. Are you feeling better?" Isabella nodded, fighting back unexpected tears. "Thanks to you. Can I come in?" The apartment was tiny. One bedroom, a small kitchen, a living room with furniture that had seen better days. But it was clean and warm, filled with the smell of something cooking on the stove. Lena peeked out from behind her father, curious. "Papa, is that the lady you helped?" Tomasz nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, please come in," he said to Isabella. "I was just making soup for dinner. It's not much, just potatoes and carrots, but you're welcome to join us." Isabella sat at the small wooden table, and for the first time in years, she felt truly at home. The soup was simple, watery even, but it tasted better than any expensive meal she'd had in months. Lena chatted happily, telling Isabella about her school, her drawings, her dreams. "Papa says if I study hard, I can be anything I want, even a doctor or a teacher." Isabella smiled. "Your papa is right. You can be anything." Lena grinned. "Have some more soup, miss. Papa cooks really well, even though we only have potatoes most days." After dinner, as Lena did her homework, Tomasz and Isabella sat together in the tiny living room. "I came to apologize," Isabella said. "You lost your job because of me." Tomasz shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong. I chose to help you. I'd make the same choice again." Isabella studied his face. There was no bitterness there, no anger, just quiet dignity. "Can I ask you something? Why do you work as a janitor? You seem educated." Tomasz smiled sadly. "I was an accountant once, but when my wife got sick, I took time off to care for her. After she died, I couldn't go back to that life. The office hours were too long. I wouldn't see Lena, so I became a janitor. Night shifts meant I could be home for her in the afternoons, help her with homework, make her dinner, tuck her in. Money doesn't matter if you miss your child growing up." Isabella felt something crack open inside her chest. "You gave up everything for her." "I didn't give up anything," Tomasz said. "I chose what mattered most." He reached up and touched the rusty key around his neck. "My wife told me before she died, love isn't what you say, it's what you sacrifice. I try to live by that." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "I run a company worth billions," she confessed. "But I've never had what you have. A real home, a real family, someone who cares if I come home at night." Tomasz looked at her with understanding. "Money can't buy the things that matter, can it?" Isabella shook her head. "No, it can't." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Isabella made a decision. "Let me help you, please. You need a job and I can—" But Tomasz raised his hand gently. "If you want to help, then just visit sometimes. Lena would like that. And honestly, so would I. I haven't had adult conversation in a long time." So Isabella started coming by. Once a week at first, then twice, then almost every day after work. She would sit with Lena and help with homework, patiently explaining math problems and reading stories. She brought small gifts, nothing expensive, just coloring books and pencils. Tomasz would cook simple meals, and they would eat together like a family. One evening, it started raining hard. Isabella didn't have an umbrella. Without hesitation, Tomasz gave her his only one. "But you'll get wet," she protested. He smiled. "I'll dry. You have further to go." The next day, Isabella brought Lena a new set of art supplies. The girl's face lit up like the sun. "Really? For me?" Isabella knelt down to her level. "Really, I heard you like to draw." Lena threw her arms around Isabella's neck. "Thank you, Miss Isabella. I'm going to draw you and Papa." That night, Lena drew a picture of 3 people holding hands. When Tomasz saw it, his breath caught. Isabella was in the middle. Weeks passed. The small apartment became a place of warmth and laughter. Tomasz would play his old guitar, simple songs that made Lena dance around the room. Isabella would clap along, forgetting for a few precious hours about quarterly reports and board meetings. One evening, Tomasz hung the rusty key from his wife beside Lena's new art supplies on the shelf. Isabella asked what it meant. Old and new, he said, both precious. Both reminders that love takes many forms. That night, after Isabella went home to her empty penthouse, she sat down and opened her private journal. With shaking hands, she wrote, "He lost his job because he helped me, but somehow he gave me something far more valuable. He gave me a home, not a place, but a feeling. The feeling that I belong somewhere, that someone would notice if I didn't come home. For the first time in my life, I understand what family really means." Isabella closed her journal and whispered to herself, "I have everything the world says matters. But Tomasz, with nothing, has everything I've been searching for." But happiness never stays hidden for long. Isabella had been careful, or so she thought. She dressed simply when visiting Tomasz. She never brought her driver. She tried to keep her two worlds separate. But someone noticed. One of her board members, Victor Novak, saw her leaving the old apartment building one evening. He hired a private investigator. Within a week, he had photos, addresses, and a full report on Tomasz Kowalski, unemployed janitor, single father, living in poverty. Victor smiled. This was exactly the leverage he needed. At the next board meeting, Victor struck. He projected the photos on the screen for everyone to see. Isabella walking with Tomasz and Lena. Isabella eating in their tiny kitchen. Isabella laughing, genuinely happy. "Our CEO," Victor announced, his voice dripping with contempt, "has been secretly dating an unemployed janitor, a nobody. This is who represents our billion-dollar company." The room erupted in whispers. Isabella's face burned with anger and shame. "My personal life is not your business," she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "It is when it affects our reputation," another board member chimed in. "The press will destroy us if they find out. CEO dating a janitor? We'll be a laughingstock." Victor leaned forward. "I suggest you end this embarrassing relationship immediately, for the good of the company." Isabella stood up, her fists clenched. "Get out, all of you. This meeting is over." But the damage was done. By the next morning, the story had leaked to the press. The headlines were brutal. Billionaire CEO secret romance with homeless janitor. From boardroom to mop closet, Isabella's shocking love life. The photos were everywhere. Tomasz saw the news on a television in a shop window. His heart sank. He rushed home and immediately started packing what few belongings they had. Lena watched, confused. "Papa, where are we going?" Tomasz's hands trembled as he folded their clothes. "We need to leave, sweetheart. We're causing trouble for Miss Isabella." But before he could finish packing, Isabella burst through the door. She had run all the way from her car, her expensive shoes muddy, her hair wild. "Don't," she gasped. "Please don't leave." Tomasz shook his head. "Look at what's happening. They're destroying you because of me. I'm not worth it. I'm just—" Isabella grabbed his hands. "Don't you dare finish that sentence. Don't you dare call yourself just anything." Tears streamed down her face. "You gave me something nobody else could. You showed me what real life looks like, what real love looks like. And I'm not giving that up because some board members think I should date someone more appropriate." "But your company," Tomasz said weakly. "Your reputation." Isabella laughed, a broken sound. "I've spent my entire life building that company. Do you know what it's cost me? Every relationship, every friendship, every moment of peace. I have money and power and success, and I was dying inside. Then I met you. You, with your rusty key and watery soup and unconditional love for your daughter. You showed me what I was missing, what I've been searching for my whole life." She pressed her forehead against his. "You don't understand. You gave me everything money can't buy." But the pressure kept mounting. The press camped outside Isabella's office. Reporters shouted questions whenever she appeared. "Is it true you're dating a janitor? Did you fire him yourself? What do your investors think?" The stock price began to drop. Shareholders demanded answers. And through it all, Tomasz felt himself shrinking. He stayed inside the apartment, afraid to go out, afraid of causing more harm. Lena stopped smiling. The warmth that had filled their home began to fade, replaced by fear and uncertainty. 1 week later, Isabella called a press conference. The entire building was packed with journalists, cameras, microphones. The board members sat in the front row, their faces grim. Victor Novak looked pleased, certain that Isabella would announce the end of her inappropriate relationship. Isabella stepped up to the podium, her silver fountain pen in her pocket, a reminder of who she was supposed to be. The room fell silent. Every eye was on her. This was the moment that would define everything. A journalist shouted the first question. "Miss Isabella, is it true you've been romantically involved with an unemployed janitor?" Another voice joined in. "What do you say to shareholders who feel this reflects poorly on the company?" Then Victor Novak himself stood up, his voice cutting through the noise. "Ms. Kowalski, people want to know. How can someone in your position choose to associate with a man like that? A janitor, someone with no education, no prospects, no value to society." The room went completely silent. Isabella looked at Victor for a long moment. Then she stepped away from the podium and walked to the door. It opened, and Tomasz walked in, his hand holding Lena's. He wore his only suit, old and slightly too small, but clean and pressed. His face was pale but determined. Isabella had asked him to come, and he couldn't refuse her. She walked to him, took his hand, and led him to the front of the room. Cameras flashed everywhere. Isabella turned to face the crowd, her hand still holding Tomasz's. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "You want to know about this man? Let me tell you. 3 weeks ago, I collapsed from exhaustion in the building where he worked. I had pushed myself so hard, sacrificed so much for success, that my body simply gave up. And this man, this nobody, as you call him, stopped his work to help me. He gave me water. He made sure I was safe. He showed me kindness when I was at my lowest." Her voice cracked with emotion, and he was fired for it, fired for helping another human being. She looked at Victor, then at the board members. This man lost his job because he chose compassion over rules, because he saw a person in need and couldn't walk away. And you ask me why I choose to be with him? Isabella's eyes blazed. Because he represents everything I forgot in my climb to the top. Because he knows that a person's value isn't measured in money or status. Because he is teaching me that real success isn't what you achieve. It's who you become. She pulled Tomasz closer, and Lena stood on his other side, small but brave. "This is my family now, and if you can't accept that, if you think loving good people is shameful, then maybe I don't belong in your world." The room erupted. Some people shouted in outrage. Others began to clap. Isabella didn't care. She had made her choice. If you believe a person's value isn't determined by their job title, drop a below. Follow LT Stories for more moments that restore faith in humanity. The fallout from the press conference was immediate and chaotic. Half the board resigned in protest. Investors pulled out. The stock price dropped 20% in a single day. Business magazines ran articles predicting the company's collapse. CEO destroys billion-dollar empire for janitor romance, the headline screamed. For 48 hours, it seemed like Isabella had lost everything. But then something unexpected happened. The story went viral, but not in the way anyone predicted. People around the world started sharing Isabella's speech. Social media exploded with support. Finally, a CEO who remembers what it means to be human. This is the kind of leader we need. She chose love over greed. She's a hero. Young people especially connected with the story. They were tired of billionaires who seemed to care only about profit. Here was someone willing to risk everything for what mattered. Within a week, the company's stock had recovered. Within 2 weeks, it was higher than ever. New investors lined up, wanting to be part of a company with values. Isabella made her next move carefully but decisively. She restructured the entire company. She created a new position, Director of Employee Welfare, and she offered it to Tomasz. At first he laughed, thinking she was joking. "Isabella, I'm a janitor. I don't know anything about running a department. But Isabella took his hands. You know the most important thing. You know how to see people, how to value them, how to make sure the ones at the bottom aren't forgotten. She smiled. I need someone who understands what it's like to struggle. Someone who won't lose sight of our workers while chasing profits. Tomasz was terrified, but he accepted. His first day at the company was surreal. He wore a simple suit, nothing expensive, and walked through the marble lobby he used to mop. Employees stared, some whispered, but Tomasz didn't try to be anything other than himself. He started visiting every department, from the mailroom to the executive floor. He sat with janitors during their breaks. He ate lunch with security guards. He asked them about their lives, their struggles, their needs. And he listened, really listened. Within months, the company transformed. Tomasz implemented better wages for the lowest paid workers. He created childcare services for single parents. He established mental health support for employees under stress. He did it all quietly, without fanfare, just solving problems he understood because he had lived them. The workers loved him. Productivity soared. And Isabella watched with pride as the man she loved proved that kindness wasn't weakness. It was the strongest kind of leadership. At home, their family grew stronger. Lena had started calling Isabella Mama without anyone asking her to. The first time it happened, Isabella was helping with homework. Lena looked up and said, Mama, I don't understand this problem. Then she froze, her hand flying to her mouth. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... But Isabella pulled her into a tight hug, tears streaming down her face. Say it again, she whispered. Please say it again. And Lena did, over and over, until all three of them were crying and laughing at the same time. Isabella, who had signed $1,000 contracts without blinking, said later, That was the most important signature of my life, not on paper, but on my heart, the moment I became a mother. They moved to a new house together, nothing extravagant, just a comfortable home with a small yard. The first thing they did was plant an oak tree in the front garden. Tomasz drove the shovel into the ground while Lena and Isabella held the young tree steady. This tree will grow with us, Tomasz said, through storms and sunshine, just like our family. Their dinners became sacred time. No phones, no work talk, just the three of them around the table. Sometimes they ate simple meals, soup and bread like the old days. Sometimes they had fancier food. It didn't matter. What mattered was the laughter, the stories, the feeling of belonging. One evening, as candles flickered on the table, Isabella looked at Tomasz and Lena and felt her chest swell with a happiness so complete it almost hurt. After Lena went to bed, Isabella and Tomasz sat on the back porch under the stars. Isabella rested her head on his shoulder, something she never thought she'd do with anyone. Do you ever regret it? Tomasz asked quietly. Everything you gave up? Isabella was silent for a moment. Then she smiled. I didn't give up anything. I traded a prison made of gold for a home made of love. That's not a sacrifice. That's the smartest deal I ever made. Tomasz laughed and kissed the top of her head. You know what's funny? You used to pay people to clean your office. Now you're with the man who used to do it. Isabella lifted her head and looked at him seriously. You did more than clean floors, Tomasz. You swept away all the emptiness in my life. You showed me what I'd been missing. You taught me that the most valuable things can't be bought. They can only be earned through being human. She touched the rusty key around his neck. This key opened more doors than all my money ever could. If you believe happiness can grow from the most unexpected places, press like and follow LT Stories. Share this with someone who needs to remember that love is the greatest success. 1 year later, everything had changed. The small oak tree in their front yard had grown taller, its branches reaching toward the sky. The house was filled with warmth and life. Photos covered the walls, capturing moments of ordinary happiness. Lena's artwork hung everywhere, bright splashes of color that made every room feel alive. This was home. This was family. This was everything that mattered. One Saturday morning, Tomasz was cleaning out the garage when he found an old box. Inside was Lena's drawing from a year ago. 3 people holding hands. He stared at it for a long time, remembering how impossible it had seemed back then. How could a janitor, a CEO, and a little girl become a family? But here they were, living proof that love doesn't follow society's rules. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky orange and gold, the three of them sat together in the living room. Lena was curled up with a book. Isabella was reviewing some documents, but not frantically like before. She looked peaceful. Tomasz watched them both, his heart full. "I have something to say," he announced. They both looked up. Tomasz pulled out the old drawing and held it up. "Remember this, Lena? You drew this a year ago." Lena grinned. "That's us. That's our family." Tomasz nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "You saw it before any of us did. You knew we belonged together." He turned to Isabella. "I spent so long thinking I wasn't good enough, that someone like you couldn't really want someone like me. I thought about leaving, about disappearing so I wouldn't hold you back." Isabella started to protest, but Tomasz held up his hand gently. "Let me finish." He knelt down in front of her, taking her hands in his. "But then I realized something. Love isn't about being good enough. It's about choosing each other every single day. It's about building something together that's stronger than what either of us could build alone." Tears filled his eyes. "You chose me when the world told you not to. You chose us. And now I'm choosing you officially, forever. Isabella, will you marry me?" The room went completely silent. Isabella's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Lena jumped up and down, squealing with joy. "Say yes, Mama, say yes." Isabella looked at Tomasz, this man who had changed everything, and nodded through her tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Tomasz pulled out a simple ring. Nothing expensive, just a thin silver band. "It's not much," he said. Isabella slipped it on her finger and kissed him. "It's perfect. You're perfect. This is perfect." Months later, they had a small wedding in their backyard under the oak tree they had planted together. No fancy venue, no hundreds of guests, just close friends and the people who mattered. Lena was the flower girl, beaming with pride. When Tomasz and Isabella exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. "I promise to see you," Tomasz said. "Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just you. The woman who laughs at my terrible jokes and cries during children's movies. The woman who taught me that being broken isn't the end of the story." Isabella held his hands tightly. "I promise to never forget where we started, in a moment of weakness that became our greatest strength. You showed me that real wealth isn't measured in money. It's measured in moments like this, in hands held and hearts opened, in choosing love over everything else." They kissed as their friends cheered, and the oak tree's leaves rustled in the breeze, as if celebrating with them. That night, after everyone had gone home, the three of them stood together looking at the tree. It had grown so much in just a year, strong and steady, its roots deep in the earth. "This tree is us," Lena said wisely. Tomasz smiled. "Yes, sweetheart, it is." Isabella wrapped her arms around both of them. "Real value isn't in what you own or what you achieve. It's in who stands beside you, who sees you, who chooses you every single day." The gate to their home stood open, welcoming. Inside, lights glowed warm against the evening darkness. This was where a janitor became a director, where a CEO became a wife and mother, where a little girl's dream of a complete family came true. This was where three broken pieces came together and created something whole, something beautiful, something that proved love is the only currency that truly matters. If you believe everyone deserves to be valued for who they are, not what they do, follow LT Stories for more healing tales that touch the soul. Like and share if this moved you. Let's spread the message that kindness is never wasted.